Quick call to order. Regular meeting of the Planning Commission. Phyllis, do you have roll call?
Yes. Chairperson Bob McCool.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Lisa Ritchie. Commissioners Phyllis Harden here. David Harper.
Here.
Jerry Malia.
Here.
Ben Miller.
Here.
Jason Reese.
Here.
Anthony Stewart.
Here.
Steve Woody. Planner Stephen Williams.
Here.
Attorney Dan Harvey.
Here.
All right. Do see that there's some members of the public here. If there's anybody who'd like to comment on any consent agenda, which we don't have, so any non-agenda items, you can take a minute now to do that. If not, we'll move on to open a public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving a major final development plan amendment to allow for additional wall signs on the medical office building at 3 Superior Drive, Lot 1A, Block 12, and associated parking garage at 5 Superior Drive, Lot 1B, Block 12. Is there proof of publication?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And as I understand, the applicant's not quite ready, so we're going to continue this public hearing to a date certain, which will be
The 18th of September, yep.
the 18th of September.
Did you open the public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Opening the public hearing. Sorry.
Okay, and then go from there.
And we'll continue this public hearing until 18th of September. Okay. And then we're going to move on to public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving a replat, final plat for Lot 1, Block 1, Rock Creek Ranch filing 17C, and a final plat site plan to develop a 7.2 acre parcel. Lot 1, Block 1, Rock Creek Ranch filing 17 with 94 condominium units. And that public hearing is open. And do we have proof of publication?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, is there a staff presentation?
Yes, Stephen Williams, town staff. Phyllis, can you get the lights when you get a chance? Tonight's development application involves a final plat as well as a final plat site plan for filing 17 within Rock Creek Ranch. The images on the screen are 3D renderings of the proposed development. Representatives from Superior Shores are here tonight and have a presentation of their own, which will include a 3D fly-through of their proposal. The subject property is located south of Autry Reservoir, north of Colton Road, and just west of the Flatirons Mall in Broomfield. The property is also bordered to the south by Broomfield and surrounded by the Bell Flatirons apartment within the town of Superior to the north and west. Recent planning applications for this area include a replat and a rezoning, which both occurred in 2016. The replat is illustrated here. It created the subject property, which is roughly 7.2 acres in size, as well as lots 2 and 3 to the east. The plat also created Tract A, which is sited between lots 1 and 2, and has been improved with a private road named Autry Drive. The rezoning amendment is illustrated here. It rezoned the subject property from RAC, a commercial zone, to R2A to allow for residential development. Some key allowances of that PD are highlighted here on the left. It had a maximum, or established a maximum height density or height limitation of 50 feet, a maximum density of 14 dwelling units per acre, and an open space requirement of 40%. The current plat application is required to address the proposed easement vacations as well as the easement dedications. No additional lots are proposed. The application is being processed as a condominium development, which does not involve the creation of individual lots for each parcel. These units, however, will be for sale. A condo plat will eventually be required in order to clarify the footprints of the individual units being sold. The plat application includes 6 sheets. The plat sheet here is sheet 6. It reflects the requested easement vacations, which include kind of in the center of the property, removal of irrigation raw water easement. In the northeast corner of the property, there's 2 vacations for portions of a sidewalk easement. And then here in this little corner near Autry Drive and Colton Road is a utility easement vacation. The plat also includes 3 additional plat sheets that illustrate the proposed easement dedications. They're broken out because they often overlap. This sheet reflects the required easements for emergency fire access, and the relocated ditch easement. So currently, that ditch that was shown on the last property is above grade, and that irrigation water's conveyed through a ditch. Now they're proposing an easement to pipe that same water through the property. So that's the easement that establishes that plat. And then these easements here are for fire access, and you can see that there's turnarounds that are incorporated on the east and west sides, and then a looped drive that's incorporated in the middle. This plat sheet illustrates the easements required for utilities and public sidewalks. So the utilities that are public, which include water mains, water meters, and sewer mains, are shown kind of centrally on the site. And then the new easement location for the sidewalk that goes through the northeast corner is reestablished in the configuration shown. This plat sheet requires the required public access to allow guests and services, including the Postal Service and trash and recycling providers, to traverse the property. It also illustrates the location of private roads that are proposed to serve the 20 condo buildings proposed. In short, one driveway is proposed off Tyler Drive here to the west, and 2 access points are proposed off Autry from the east. And then 4 north-south alleyways are proposed central to the site, south of this main private road, which is Lakeshore Lane that's proposed. The cover sheet for the final plat site plan follows the current standards and for development application, and includes the appropriate certificates, data tables, and sheet index. The detailed development tables that clarify proposed setbacks, building heights, parking spaces, etc., are included on other final plat site plan sheets within the application, but this sheet does include a zoning and land use table to clarify acreage ownership, building and paving coverage, as well as landscaped open space. As illustrated, the developer will retain the entire 7.2 acres of the property. The applicant's context site plan is reflected here. It illustrates the vehicular connections discussed in the plat overview. The sheet also illustrates that sidewalks are proposed throughout the site, and locations of the neighboring trails and existing bike paths. So there is a trail. Sorry, the mouse isn't working so well. Okay. There's a trail north that's existing just south of Autry Shores. There's trails existing along Colton Road to the south. There's a sidewalk, and then there's a sidewalk existing on Tyler Drive. They're also proposing kind of a parallel sidewalk within their property to the north that gets you through the site, as well as a sidewalk connection south of Lakeshore Lane here that gets you through the property, and then a number of north-south connections that connect through the property and out to these existing roads. Autry Drive itself was not developed with the sidewalk, so they'll be building an attached sidewalk on the west and north side of Autry Drive where it's contiguous with their parcel. This application includes the relevant overall partial site plans, the overall and relevant partial site plans, as well as the overall site plan that's illustrated here, which includes more detailed development standards such as building heights, setbacks, and parking. Additional building mix and unit size tables have also been provided to clarify sizes, square footage, and configurations of each of the buildings and unit types proposed. As illustrated, 20 condominium buildings are proposed over the 7.2 acre site. 2 styles of buildings are proposed: the reservoir and plateau units, with the former sited north of Lakeshore Lane along the reservoir, and the latter sited to the south along Colton. The reservoir units are designed to follow the shoreline, while the plateau units are generally sited to face east or west. All units are designed to be alley loaded, with the reservoir units facing north and taking advantage of the views, and the plateau units sited to front adjacent streets or green space. The development standards table illustrated here shows conformance with the applicable PUD amendment for this area of Rock Creek, including 20-foot setbacks from the reservoir, 40-foot setbacks from Colton Road, 35-foot setbacks from Tyler Drive, and 15-foot setbacks from Autry Drive. A minimum of 20 feet between buildings has also been afforded. This table also clarifies the maximum proposed height is 45 feet. The total number of buildings is 20, and the density is 13.1. The plan sheet also includes a separate table highlighted in yellow that reflects the individual building heights for each unit or each building. And again, the R2A zoning allows for 50 feet. The building mix table highlighted in red is included to clarify how each of the 7 building types, buildings A, B4, B5, E, F, G, and H, are configured. This table also clarifies that building A, B4, and B5 are classified as the reservoir units, and the other units are classified as plateau. The reservoir units here in blue have 3 different unit types, A through C, which are arranged in different configurations. The unit size table, highlighted in yellow, clarifies that the individual unit widths for these are between 22 and 28 feet. The depths are consistently 50 feet. Clarifies square footages as well as bedroom and bath counts. The reservoir condos will range in size from 2,900 square feet to 3,400 square feet and include 3 to 4 bedrooms along with 3.5 to 5.5 baths. The unit size table also clarifies that the units A and B will each have 2-car garages and unit C will have a 3-car garage. In total, 9 reservoir condo buildings are proposed with 5 building A configurations and 2 B4 configurations, as well as 2 B5 configurations. And this site plan map also clarifies that the A and B configurations, which are also finished differently, will alternate along that north side of Lakeshore Lane. The plateau units to the south include 4 different building types, E through H in different groupings. The unit size table again clarifies widths, some of which are a little bit narrower, the narrowest being 17 feet. Depths are also shorter at 38 to 42 feet, and square footages accordingly are also smaller. These units range in size from 2,000 square feet to 3,100 square feet and include 2 to 4 bedrooms and 3.5 baths. The lone 2-bedroom unit, Unit D, is proposed to have a tandem garage, but as reflected in this unit size table, only 1 parking space has been counted toward their parking requirement. Staff-related concern about how that additional kind of buried parking space would be used, and the applicant agreed to provide an additional surface parking space for these units as well. Units E and F will include traditional side-by-side garages, while Unit G will actually have a 3-car garage. We'll get into the building elevations here shortly. A separate parking table is included under the development standards that also clarifies the proposed parking plan. In addition to providing surface parking for the 2-bedroom units, the table also clarifies that the applicant has provided additional surface parking spaces for their 3 and 4-bedroom units, where only 2-car garages are proposed in order to meet the requirement of 2.5 garage spaces for anything with 3 bedrooms or above. 24 spaces have also been provided for guest parking in accordance with town standards. In total, 71 parking spaces are proposed, surface parking spaces, in addition to the 199 garage spaces, for a total of 270 parking spaces, where 255 are required by the PD. The 4 partial site plans are included within this application in addition to the overall site plan. At this scale, additional detail is actually more clear. A key map has been provided in the bottom right-hand corner to clarify how these sheets have been divided. 1 point of vehicle access is shown on this partial sheet, and this is the access from Tyler Drive. It also clarifies that there's a median within Tyler Drive, so this access is going to serve as right in, right out only. Setbacks along Tyler again are shown at 35 feet, where 20 feet is illustrated from the north and 40 from the south. The proposed condo buildings are all illustrated to meet the required setbacks, with the reservoir units generally sited on the shoreline. Vehicle access to the reservoir units is provided from Lakeshore Lane, and the building type is an alley-loaded product, so these units will have their building fronts on the north side. Typical building detail is also included on each of these plan sheets. It's here on the right, and it's really just to illustrate the distinction between overhangs that are non-conditioned and overhangs that are conditioned. The conditioned spaces not being allowed into the setbacks, while overhangs like eaves actually are allowed to extend into the setback. This plan sheet includes the eastern half of the plateau buildings and one reservoir condo complex north of Lakeshore Lane. The plateau units are sited south of Lakeshore, are primarily oriented again to the east and west, and there are also alley-loaded products with kind of a shared alley serving each unit. The fronts of units are sited to face green spaces, either along rights-of-way or within 3 common open spaces that are planned and a little bit more visible on the landscape sheets. These 2 partial plan sheets shown together here collectively illustrate the northeastern portion of this development, which is generally limited to Lakeshore Lane, parking, and 5 reservoir buildings north of the road. 2 access drives are actually shown here too, the northern portion of the southern access and then the northern access off of Autry Lane. Like sheets 4 and 5, these partial plan sheets also illustrate the parking the parking area proposed in this northeast corner. As detailed in the staff's memo, several Rock Creek Ranch performance criteria apply to the overall site design for this proposal and require a handful of exceptions, including the use of alleys, not siting buildings parallel to one another, not siting buildings end to end, or parallel to roadways or parcel lines, and then also not lining units up at minimum setbacks. Staff recognizes that the Rock Creek criteria also emphasizes oriented buildings towards open spaces, and that the proposed use of alley helps minimize the paved areas and allows the fronts of units to be sited on green space. So this is detailed more thoroughly in staff's memo. And I don't know that, I think that the short of it is that there seems to be some competing standards within the Rock Creek PD, and some were adhered to and some weren't. So I just kind of teed them up for you guys to consider, and we can go through those in more detail later if we need to. The applicant's final plat site plan also includes floor and roof plans for each building configuration. Examples of each product are shown here with the reservoir units shown on the left and the plateau unit shown on the right. They all clarified that a rooftop deck has been incorporated to each design, which is centrally located on each roof and accessible with an enclosed stairwell. All decks will also be enclosed with a safety railing. And then stairways or stairwells have been sited to provide a private open space for each of the rooftop decks. That's a little bit more visible on the elevations, which we're about to get to. The footprints illustrate unit widths and depths, as well as a number of garage parking spaces afforded, and where ADA visitable bathrooms have been incorporated into ground floors. Storage spaces within each garage have also been accommodated, in addition to a hanging bike rack per unit. The applicant has provided building elevation plan sheets for each building type proposed. Each plan includes all 4 facades and a material legend on the right. To clarify that the materials and color selections proposed, each elevation also illustrates building dimensions, unit widths, depths, and heights, as well as floor heights. The plan sheet illustrates that this plan sheet illustrates one of the reservoir units and clarifies that this design as a 5-plex will have one 22-foot wide unit on the left side, a 28-foot wide unit on the right, and then 3 20-foot wide units in the middle. Unit C, the 28-foot wide unit, also is the one with a 3-car garage, while units A and B offer 2-car garages. And all are shown to incorporate that 4th floor deck. So the way that they've cited it allows for privacy for this one to the left. Basically everybody has privacy to the left except this end unit. And they have that kind of shared stairwell here, not shared, but adjoining stairwell here, and then their privacy is off to the right. The material and color scheme proposed for this one includes a graphite color stone, generally used as the building base, as well as white stucco and a lighter gray horizontal lap siding, a secondary darker gray. Stucco is also incorporated and used on the 2nd and 4th floor levels. Their material boards are in front of you here next to the podium. Building B4 illustrated here is designed as a 4-plex. This one's shown in order to illustrate the other material changes that are proposed for the reservoir unit. So these are the B4 and B5 color schemes. You can see that it's a lighter stone proposed here with a white and gray, a lighter white and gray stone with a dark gray stucco and a dark brown siding serving as the secondary materials, and then a lighter stucco also used, a darker brown stucco also used on the 4th floor. And then these elevation sheets also, it's harder at this scale, but kind of help illustrate how the building articulation has also been included in these designs, which will be more evident from their 3D modeling. The plateau units here are the ones that are going to be south of that main drive, Lakeshore Lane, and they also have 2 distinct material finishes. The first one here is got a red brick as the primary material base. And then they have, a gray stucco and gray horizontal lap siding as their secondary, white and gray horizontal lap siding as their secondary color elements and material finishes. And then this is the last of their secondary plateau unit color scheme. This one's designed as a 6-plex with condo units, the end units kind of bookending 3 interior units, one of which is the 17-foot wide Unit D floor plan, which features the tandem garage. The second of the 2 plateau color schemes uses a light tan as a primary color with white stucco and dark gray, and then a tan horizontal lap siding serving as the secondary colors. The rears of these plateau units also include a horizontal siding in the middle, and staff has had some discussion with them about what this material should be in terms of it's basically painted to match the brick. So this is the first time we got to see those material boards, and you can see the color choices that they've selected and how close those materials actually, or those colors actually match. This application also includes a material board, which articulates the finishes a little bit better than the elevations. And then the application's landscape plan is generally illustrated here. This is how they've calculated their open space as well. What's illustrated in green is generally the common green spaces. It's not as evident at this scale, but these are the 3 kind of major common open spaces that they've proposed, and they're all with different finishes. So this is more of a great lawn. This is actually a very densely landscaped garden area, and then this is the area where they've incorporated some play equipment for the kids. So several details have also been included with this application to clarify site amenities and lightings. Each of these have been reviewed by staff for compliance as well. So finally, staff is recommending approval of this application based on the conditions here, which are minor technical corrections that have been related through staff's memo as well as offline directly to the applicant. And then the other condition is that the final plat needs to be recorded prior to the final plat site plan. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we can turn it over to the applicant.
Okay. Commission, have any questions for staff? This isn't really a time for any comments about the
I have a couple of questions.
application. Yeah.
The open space along Colton is already in place. Is that correct?
There's landscaping that's been done within the right-of-way already, and then there's some sidewalk improvements that were done with the Resolute development. So when they did the horizontal infrastructure, when they started routing utilities from Tyler Drive west to east, essentially, we had them put in the sidewalk and then the landscaping immediately on Colton Road then at that time.
Will there be more?
Yes, there will be more.
There will be more
Yeah.
than what's already there.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and the other question I have is, on the north side between Autry Reservoir and this property boundary, looks like there's a path. Did you mention that?
Yep.
Or
There's an existing path.
it's already existing out there?
There'll be 2 paths, but there's one that's existing, and they have some sidewalk stubs where they're allowed to tie in.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah,
Oh,
and then this is a public kind of multimodal trail that goes through here. And that's what eventually crosses their property here, and the alignment of that would have conflicted with their proposed, this connection here, this vehicle connection. And so as part of this application, they're reconfiguring that alignment to run north of here, but it still ties in the same location on Connor Way and still connects with West Flatiron Crossing and the mall to the east.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have.
Any other questions for staff? All right. I assume the applicant has a presentation?
We do. So Stephen's given you a lot of the technical side of this. My name's Mark Young. This is Nathan Sandberg. We're with Urban Green Development. I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are and what our intentions are with the site. And then we'll show you our presentation, kind of a cool little slide through the site. I think it will really do a lot to help you understand what it, how we've managed to connect the project to the reservoir and the outside. So Urban Green Development is a really interesting company, but not like any other development company. We were the first nationally recognized B Corporation. The B Corporation operates to a triple bottom line. We look after the people, then we look after the planet, then we try to make a profit, which isn't always so easy after you've done the other two. But what that means is that every year we're reviewed by an outside agency and certified for our B Corporation status. That stands for Benefit Corporation. In fact, sometime next year, one of you guys might be getting a call from the B Corp certification company saying, hey, how did Mark do in the presentation? Or how did Nate do? And our reviews are tied directly to the response that we get from that. So we work really hard to make sure that we can cooperate with the community. We do the right thing by the planet, and we try to make a profit. So I want to share with you my initial thoughts. I got a call from a realtor who said, Mark, you got to go look at this property. So I drove up right away. It was on my way home. And I walked on the site and I said, wow, we got to buy this. And I called the realtor back and said, okay, we'll buy it. Now, we had a pretty stiff process going through the purchase and sale agreement with Resolute, but it all worked out really well. And here we are today. One of the initial thoughts was we can create a really, really nice community here. And dealing with the people, that's our first goal. The really nice community that we can create, we call it a conscious, sustainable community. What that means is we try to do the right thing all the way across the board. What we envision for this project, we're going to try. We can't guarantee we'll get there. We're going to try to be net positive on this site. We're exploring the possibility of using geothermal heating and cooling for each individual unit. We're exploring the possibility of supplying enough energy with solar panels to satisfy all the energy demands for the project. We don't know if we can get there yet, but as we get further down the road, we'll know. So that's really what we hope to achieve, a community where people want to live, that they can engage with the outdoors and the public, and really have a nice, healthy place to live. There are, the best way for you to see this and see what I saw initially on the site is to look at the presentation. So it's a 3D fly-through of the site. And I think I'll ask Stephen to cue that up for us and take a look at this. You can stop it by clicking on it, and I might ask you to stop it
Okay.
a time or two. This is the site coming in from over by the shopping center. These are our units along the reservoir here on the east side.
Can you use this?
Yeah.
Escape under mic, please?
Do you turn the lights down? This
Yeah,
light, these
let's-
lights? Or,
It looked a lot better on my computer, by the way, today. This did.
oh, do they, maybe it's just the brightness of these. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So here you can see each unit has its rooftop deck. This is coming down Colton now. We couldn't connect this road because Google Earth didn't have it on their site yet. This is indicative of the landscaping and the different units. These are the plateau units here. Each one of these areas are the open space, sorry about that, open space between the units. That shows you one of the alleys. So as we come down around the corner here, this is Tyler over here. So you can, again, you can see the rooftop decks. Everything's oriented to try to give everybody a view of the mountains or a view of the reservoir or both. So here's our road. This is Lakeshore Drive. These are the reservoir units over here, plateau units here. That's an alley. Here's an example of our first open space. So there's 65 feet between the units. So everybody's got a nice big open area in front of their unit. This is really the front activation of the house, of the units. Here's an example of how you can still engage the reservoir. This is our 20-foot setback here. But they're all angled like this to kind of draw you in to focus you on the reservoir. Another example of the open space. And there are 3 of those. While we're looking at this, I'd like to point out that the open space requirement was 40%. We're at 46% open space and over parked. So even providing extra parking, we were able to achieve that. I forgot to show you, but back there you could actually see into the house and see the dining room table and stuff. So this is that walkway that's already in place that people can use around the reservoir. And this is our walkway to access the units.
Is that space in between the walkways, is that landscape grass? Is it as you're showing it? Is that your property?
Yeah, so it's not all our property. I'm not exactly sure where the property line is. But right now it's kind of rough. Our side, we're about, so there's a 20-foot setback from open space. So this is probably our part right in here. And that'll all be landscaped.
Are you landscaping it all the way to the other trail, or
You know,
just a
To their
portion?
property line, which is between the 2 trails.
Yeah, it's to our
And
property.
so how much is, so does the property line run along our trail, or is it inside our trail?
It's inside the trail.
It's
So
inside
then
the
what's
trail.
gonna happen beyond that? Will it just be,
It's native right now, I don't know how, I mean, but we would have to work with that property owner if we needed it re-landscaped.
So I think that's controlled by Bell Flatirons.
It is.
oh,
And,
that is?
You know,
okay.
if they would allow it, we'd be happy to landscape it up to the
Mhm.
trail, up to the path, make it consistent. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't let us do that. So this is kind of a bird's eye view. And I think that, you know, it's a nice transition area between the commercial and the apartment houses. It's a very unique location. It's very unique views. It's hard to imagine what it looks like if you haven't walked the site. This doesn't really do it justice. Can you start it again just for a second? I just want to show you one case. Freeze that. So this gives you a good example. Here's the mountains. All of these units here have a great view. A lot of the units over here have a good view. And if you can imagine how the rooftop deck is set, right? So anybody on the deck on the open space across is looking right over. It's not really obstructed except for where the stair tower is. So everybody's got a really good view, either to the mountains to the west or to the city to the east. So we've really done a lot to try to, you know, incorporate all the benefits and all the best parts of this project, the best parts of nature and community into the project, into our house design, unit design, and the layout. So Stephen did a great job with all the technical side of it. So I really didn't go into much of the technical side. Does anybody have any questions about the project? Anything I can tell you about it?
Is that the final
That's-
part of the presentation?
I think so,
Okay.
unless you guys have something else you want me to talk about.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Ben?
I guess I had a question that I've noticed on other projects. I noticed your front entrances on the open space looked like they were at grade with the open space. Is there any way, when I've noticed that on other kind of units, it's almost like everyone always keeps their blinds closed because it feels like there's not a lot of privacy into your front room if you're right at grade with the park. Is there any way you're addressing that?
Let me ask the architect for just a second. So I have some cool consultants here. Do you step up to the patios and so in the units between, the open space between the units?
And I'll need you to come up to the mic and introduce yourself.
Yep.
And
Quickly, I'm Michael Noda with Neo Studio, and there's two things I didn't talk about. One is there's a regulation called Title IX, which is an accessibility issue for homes over 6 units. So since we're 94, we have to provide a certain quota of adaptable/accessible units. So that's why a majority of our units are on grade. But what's nice about what we're showing here and what we're doing in other townhome communities is we're creating exterior fenced-in porches. And really that's your kind of private space between public space and your front door and your front windows. So if Mark can hand me that, you could see that we have a nice little fenced-in area, and that's really your little doggy area also. And we do that to create a little buffer between, again, your public outdoor area and your front door. So there is a nice, 30 to 36 inch high semi-private space that helps keep those blinds and those doors open. Plus, you could hang out here, you could have a seat, and when your dog is out there, that's kind of the area that creates that semi-private public area between the units. But it really is the requirement for accessibility points that makes us have these units on grade. So I don't know if that answers that, but
Yeah.
that's the design. Initially we called these plateau units, but we should have called them brownstone units. But so the plateau units were designed a little more urban, but it'd been nice to have a little more vertical element to create a little more privacy. But again, the law is the law, and Title IX is Title IX. So that's the reason why these are pretty much on grade.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
The primary living floor area is also on the second level
On the
too.
second level,
So
yeah, so very good point, Stephen. So
Yes, the answer is no, they're on grade.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any questions?
I was looking at the grading plan and trying to determine on a couple of the plans it showed the waterfront or the water's edge, and it didn't really. I didn't notice what the elevation was. There you go. So that I think it says the water's edge on the dashed line. What's the elevation of the waterfront right now and the first set of units? I mean, do we look at, in a 100-year flood type situation, are we going to have any issues?
Stephen, do we have a contour map? I think it's on the survey, right? Do we have contours?
Yep.
this is your
Right there.
drainage plan that has the contours within your site, but it doesn't necessarily have the contours
Doesn't necessarily have the
outside your
contours
property.
behind it. It's a good question. I can answer that in 2 ways. I've been there, and it seems like it's pretty deep. That's one way. Second way is, if you go to the northeast side of the project, there's a spillway that's been improved over there that sheds the water down to the detention pond that Resolute put in. So, and the inlet for filling this reservoir is at a fixed height, and that inlet's staying the same. I don't know if it's ever backed up into the inlet before, but I know that we have good positive flow from Colton down to the reservoir to fill it. So,
This is reflecting about 10 feet of grade change
Okay.
between this corner and the approximate water surface edge. I mean, even closer in, it's 10 feet here, and then it looks like there's another, and that's a grade change. And then there's
Right.
some distance here, and I don't know what that elevation change is there.
so these look like 1 foot contours.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I hope that's
Yeah, if
answers
it's
your
10
question.
feet, yeah. Okay.
David? Were you done?
I have a technical question, which is about the street widths.
Yes.
The street widths are shown as 26 feet, and the garage is about the edge of the street fairly closely. There's a gap of about 3 feet to 10 feet, depending on which unit you're in. I think that means that any car accessing a garage will only be able to do it from the south side of the street, just because the turning circles will be too small, too large for them to turn in from the north side of the street. There are about 43 units along Lakeshore Lane, 43 garages in the 9 units along Lakeshore Lane, which probably means about 100 cars potentially traveling in both directions. And anybody trying to get into or out of a garage is going to have to back out across the middle of Lakeshore Lane. My question is simply, is that safe?
So here we have, this is probably our closest, this or possibly this is the closest area. So oftentimes, and I've been involved in some street design in other communities, 26 feet is a fairly wide road, and oftentimes they'll even allow parking on one side of that. We're not allowing any parking on any side of the roadway. I'm not sure if we studied the turning radius to enter the garage, if you were heading west rather than heading east. So I don't really know the answer to that. My sense of it is, when we designed it, and we had a traffic study and we had the other information available to us, that it was a reasonable distance. Is there something I could do that you can think of that would be more reassuring? Because I really don't know the answer.
Well, it struck me, Lakeshore Lane is 1/4 mile long. It struck me that that's quite a, is that a long length for a private road in a public area?
Well, Autry Shores, which is already installed, is significantly longer than, and that's a private road. I believe Connor Way is also designed as a private road, and it's considerably longer than Lakeshore Drive. I believe we met the road standards as they were defined in the code, and I believe that we have adequate separation and adequate turning distance. I can't honestly tell you that we looked at turning in from the north side of the street rather than the south side of the street. So I don't know the answer.
If you go into the north-south streets like Eastview, Westview, Nicholas, and Jonathan, they're also 26 feet wide. And it's clear that, 2 people couldn't back out of the garages on opposite sides of the street at the same time, because an average car is about 15 feet long, so you've got 30 feet of cars if you've got 2 of them together.
Sure.
That arrangement has actually been used in downtown, the new building in downtown Superior, so we've obviously decided to live with it there. But the issue for me on the Lakeshore Lane ones was that in theory it's a 2-lane road, so you've got traffic going in each direction, and you've still got cars backing out into the middle of it.
Well, let me say, I think that any negative impact there is mitigated by the fact that we have 3 access points. So, for instance, if we go to the site plan showing the roads, maybe this will help you understand how it may not be as big of an impact. So, first of all, we have an access point up here where people can exit. We have an access point here. So, it's possible that people leaving these units would drive to this access point, but more likely, if they're heading that way, they'd go that direction. These units over here would be 50-50 maybe, either exiting here or exiting up there. These units would probably be going out this way, and these units would probably be going out that way. So the chance of a clash or somebody being inconvenienced from this point, I hope is mitigated by that. The traffic study also showed that we weren't generating enough traffic points to have to regulate with signs. And I don't know how many trips per day exactly this would generate from the lakefront units, but my sense is that it's not going to be too many that little courtesy and people couldn't manage it. The other thing I'd like to say is, we do a lot of parking lot design. Our company does significant development in mid-rise buildings and other communities like this. This is not out of the ordinary for what we've designed. But a 24-foot back out is a fairly generous back out. A 20-foot back out is acceptable like Denver standards. So while it might create an opportunity for opposing units to, you know, clash momentarily, I don't think it's a long-term problem.
And, okay, I had a second sort of question, which is that there are snow removal areas that you've got on the site. What depth of snow did you think that they were going to accommodate?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. We had consultant engineering, we had a civil engineer who looked at what the snow load capacity was going to be, and he designed areas or called out areas specifically, and I think we have primary and backup areas in case there's more snowfall. He's not here right now, but Jeff, our landscape guy, is here. Do you have any ideas?
I don't know.
I'll need you to come to the microphone. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Jeff Wolfarth, Consilium Design, the landscape architect. I wasn't involved in the total volume calculations, but we worked back and forth to identify those areas and design the planting in accordance with that. And I know there was the primary and secondary, storage areas.
Stephen, I assume they met the requirements? For
Yeah, I mean, our public works staff would be able to comment more on capacity or whatever, but we do look at all these standards. We do look at the lane widths. A lot of the lane widths actually more driven by utility separation than it is by the need to have a 26-foot wide paved road, because 20 feet is often what you see in an urban alley or something like that. And those garages do, become closer to one another than what's shown here. So I don't necessarily have any concern in that regard, and I really don't have any concern in the snow storage regard either. There's a lot of, a lot of locations that have been identified, and you stack snow. The bigger concern is, whether or not you're showing those locations where you're going to kill landscaping, or whether or not the landscaping's actually been coordinated. So I think that that's all been vetted with staff. So.
Okay. Anything else, David? Jerry?
I had one quick question. Are you building this product anywhere else?
We've built similar product to this, not this exact product, but we have product with rooftop decks. We had a project on Navajo and one called Incarnation in Wheat Ridge. We have one in development right now in Lakewood, which is also very similar. I would say, and just to give you guys a sense of this, most of the units that we build are LEED Platinum, and we build to that standard or above. And why did I bring that up? Because we're going through that right now to make sure that the units we build are very, very good units, very sound units.
Okay, thank you. Where in Wheat Ridge? I was thinking about, if there's a local area we could drive by and
sure
see some
you
of this
can.
going
It's on Fenton, 39th and Fenton.
Okay.
It was called Incarnation. It should be available on our website too.
Yeah, I know this Colbell Urban Homes too. Is that yours as well?
Urban Green
Urban.
Development. I don't
Or
know
Colbell?
what that is.
Okay, Lowry, Denver, okay.
And then we
It's a
also
different
have.
Is that different?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we're not Cobalt.
Okay, looked very similar, we found.
A lot of people are, but imitation is the best form of
Yeah,
flattery.
there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
Okay, there was another question.
So when you were discussing the in and out, the three entries and exits to the property, my one concern is at Tyler. It's going to be a right out, correct?
Right in, right out. Yes, sir.
Yep. And then if you are heading south on Autry, like if you're coming out, that's going to be a right out only, correct? Because there's no way to cross to go left.
That's a right out only.
Okay, and so if you take Autry and go out the opposite way, so anybody wanting to travel east on Colton / Flatirons would most likely go out that way. So even people who are all the way over here would be traveling all the way through to get out that way.
Mhm. So in the traffic study, they did an analysis of the maximum traffic load that could be generated right here at this spot, and it was not enough to warrant a left-hand turn.
But even though it's not enough to warrant a left-hand turn, it's going to funnel a lot of people all the way up through. Well, I guess they could come out and then get onto Autry, and they
Sure.
wouldn't go all the way through. Okay.
So
I mean, the hope would be that they would come out at that center point, get onto Autry, and go out instead of driving all the way up the lane past unit number 1 and then connecting there.
Sure. I don't think there'd be any reason for them to stay on the project at that point. I mean, anybody coming down this way, it'd be probably much easier for them to do this. Otherwise, they're coming all the way around here,
Right.
back this way. So,
Okay.
I have a couple questions. So what prompted these Colton facing, I mean, these guys are all kind of, these units just seem out of place, these duplexes here. What was the thinking here instead of just having 2 more units on any given end like you did on these?
you know, there were sorry about that. There was a lot of thought that went into that. Primarily, we didn't want to have too many units attached in a row. There is this is our biggest unit with 7 attached. The duplexes seemed to make sense. It seemed reasonable to engage Colton a little bit. Let me ask Nate real quick.
Sure.
This is Nate Sandberg.
I'm Nate with Urban Green Development. Part of it was due to the fact that we wanted to, as you're coming along Colton, not see just the side of building over and over again. We wanted to see front of buildings, side of buildings, and kind of get that mix as you're coming down Colton to kind of break up any perceived wall of development as you visit the project from Colton.
Okay. And one of my, I mean, I always have density concerns. Everybody wants to build as many homes as they can fit onto a parcel. And I'm looking at these areas in between. I kind of, was looking at the size of them. They're like 30 feet wide. The green space is probably 30 feet wide. And I agree it's nice. You have a nice little area out there, but I mean, kind of in your project notes, you talked about place to throw Frisbee and play with your dog. And I guess, well, for one, we can't really play with a dog because you're not allowed off leash. But I'm not seeing throwing a Frisbee out there. I mean, I'm not seeing enough. For 94 units, and I don't know how many people you're expecting here or what your target market is, but I'm not seeing any place to play. And you even alluded to the in the beginning of your conversation that this is, and I think your words were, I wrote it down over here, a healthy place to live and engage with the outdoors. And I'm struggling because of the density here of the ability to play
Sure.
outdoors here. And I don't know, can you speak to that a little bit?
I'd like to. So, first of all, I don't know the exact width of the grassy area, but we could pull up the landscape plan and take a
Yeah,
look.
it's about 30 feet. We have to take the sidewalks out, at least from looking at the drawings. But
So when I was a kid, we played on the sidewalks too.
yeah,
And, we have about 65 feet from building face to building face between our units, which is it's a pretty big area. Maybe there'd be some I don't know, interference or no fly zones or something like that around the decks and patios. But we have so if you look here at this flexible recreation area, I mean, from here to here, that's a pretty big area.
well, you got to take the sidewalks out, right? So it's like this. It's in between. It's this grassy area in between. You got sidewalks on this side, a sidewalk on this side, and then some grassy area in between here.
So so I don't know what sorry about that. So the city has a standard. They wanted to have, for a project this size, about a half acre of open space for play area. We've provided substantially more than a half acre of play area. Now maybe it's
Is that
broken up.
divided up across the?
Yeah, divided up across the
Yeah.
areas. I'd also like to point out that the density that was approved here was for 14 units per acre. We're at 13.1. So we've reduced the density by about 8%. You know, I feel like we've met the spirit of the development criteria. So if you look at this area here, I mean, I guess we could take the sidewalks out as well, but the sidewalks kind of play into this whole thing. In here, we've got a covered area, gazebo. We've got sidewalks and parks, benches, and dog waste stations, things like that. It's an area for people to gather. And then we have the other one, which is our tot lot. We've got, and we've been through the review with the Parks Department. They've approved our park equipment, and so I don't know. You know, I think we
what's
do a
in
good
what's
job.
in that tot lot? I'm trying to remember what I read.
There's a swing, and there's some. Jeff, you want to come back and tell them a little bit about the tot lot? You designed it.
So there's the thinking behind the play equipment is to reach the full range of age groups, and so 2 to 5, 5 to 12, and so in the left-hand picture is younger play to stimulate, physical activity, coordination, a little bit of sense of wonder. The middle picture there is a climbing apparatus, and then as Mark was talking to, is kind of that's a group swing where you get a couple kids on it, and so that kind of spans the gamut of age groups. I'd also just add that the nature of this development in and of itself is to have the individual open spaces to be more of a democratic, concept to appeal to each block of housing. So I think the question is, how are they to be used? And I don't think we're arguing that you're going to get a touch football game going in there, but you certainly can kick a ball, and you can throw a frisbee, and you can throw the ball to your dog. And then we have the entire Autry Reservoir as your bigger recreational area. And that's how Rock Creek was designed, to have the denser developments and then have the big common open space.
Well, and that's why I was asking about the border around Autry, because I just wondered if that could be a play area, but you don't know, you only own about half of that.
Yeah, so that
piece.
internal walkway is the property one. And then the
What's the demographic for? I mean, who are you trying to sell to? What's?
So I think that our target market, I think there's really two areas, two ends of the spectrum. And in our project in Wheat Ridge, we were pleasantly surprised to see how that was represented. So we have a lot of people who are empty nesters. In fact, a lot of our units are designed to have a retrofit elevator put in, so that in case they want to, if you're an empty nester and you want to go up to the rooftop, it'll take you all the way from the top to the bottom of the house. So that's one element. And the second element is younger people who are just starting out, and people who are new or probably people in the tech industry who want to have this sort of a statement for a home. I mean, it's very efficient, very green, energy efficient. I also wanted to point out, as far as the recreation goes, we have connections to the common area of the path all around the reservoir. We've got bike paths and access to miles and miles and miles of pathways. And, so really, when we designed this, we didn't really have kids in mind. Although I do think that, there's an opportunity for the kids to be there.
I think, from my viewpoint, a 30-foot wide green space by 60 feet long, however deep that is, it is, you can throw a frisbee in there fairly easily. I mean, this is 24 to 25 feet wide here, and if you think of that as a space, to throw and kick a ball and everything, I think it is actually substantial.
I think that's 180 feet long,
Yeah, I mean,
160 feet long.
That's nice. I think that provides a quite a bit of an open space.
And then my other question was around the color palette.
Okay.
Is that out of the Rock Creek PD, or where did the color palette come from for?
The Rock Creek PD is fairly general in terms of like muted tones and earth tones, and it falls into that range. There's nothing bright or bold, and it's harmonious with one another. So there's no like you have to have red, or grays, or beiges.
They're
or
just
anything
not
like
permitted in that PD. Or?
Well, it's not that specific. It just
Okay.
talks about earth tones.
And talk to me
muted
about that, because I
colors.
got to tell you, this looks like, I mean, to me, it's an extremely boring color palette. And I mean, yes, the things we're seeing, at least I'm seeing that have been successful in some of the multifamily, they're brighter, they stand out, they kind of grab your attention. And this is intensely muted color palette. Are you following a guideline? Is it your standard for?
I
Or-
can't
or-
say that.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you, first off, I have very poor taste, and I can't dress myself. If my wife doesn't put out clothes, you don't know what I'm going to end up in. So what I'd like to do, we have our architect here who is intentionally involved in designing the color palette.
Okay.
And we did work with staff to make changes and make modifications to it. I'll let her tell you a little bit about the color palette.
Okay.
Want to talk about the colors?
I'll start.
One of you has to. Do you want this, a pointer?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So, again, I'm Michael Noda with Neo Studio. What we really wanted to do is we wanted to create something that the materials were, and the colors were timeless, and the detailing was very intricate. So we wanted to create architecture that wasn't, the first thing you say was, wow. What we wanted to do was, we wanted to make sure as it ages, you considered it to be wow. And so we wanted to create a really timeless and important design, and we used really, again, very good materials in terms of a stone base or a brick base. And in terms of the colors, we wanted to make sure the color palette was complementing each other with accent colors, so the entire project looked like it molded together and was designed under one design. And so the accent colors all match, and we created 4 of these schemes, but the real key is how the detailing integrates with the landscape design also. So the landscape design, if you looked at that model, the fly-through is pretty accurate, and what we wanted to do is we didn't want the architectural colors to over saturate with the landscape colors. So we created a color base that, again, was timeless, with enough contrasting colors between the base materials and the middle materials and the roof materials, but had a consistent accent color that went through all 94 units. But the real key is it's a timeless color palette, but we want the accents in terms of the landscaping to really accentuate and create the pop. So that's the real key, is we didn't want something the first day you saw it go, wow. We wanted something as you drove by it in 10 years to continue saying, man, that's a really nice project, and it's timeless. And so that's what we've delivered to you. And some of the other projects that we've done in urban Denver, we could have the yellows and the lime greens, but I think for what we're trying to create here is a pretty timeless palette of color and a really sensitive material that shows that this project's going to be here for the long run, and that's why we've picked what we had. But again, it's the detailing and really our frames that we've created around each one of these bays that really creates the pop. So I don't know if you followed that, but if you go back to some of the elevations real quick, Stephen. We've created frames around our bays, and these frames and these elements you could see here and around some of the stair. Those frames in a very contrasting color really creates a detail and an accent that hopefully when you see it will say, wow, that's an interesting detail, but also it's a very timeless detail. So instead of a standard historic cornice, we've created a very thin edge cornice that again relates to a larger frame, but those bays have an extra amount of detail around it So it's just not a stucco cornice. It's a cornice that has a sheet metal frame around it. So again, it's the details, the contrasting colors around a stucco or a lap siding that really creates the timeless architecture and really the importance of the design. But so we don't see it as a boring, we see it as a play on a lot of materials and a lot of details to create a timeless color palette and material palette. So stone, brick is again the majority of the materials, and those materials are very timeless. Accentuated by, again, a bay that has another frame or accentuating element on top of that in a contrasting color. So, and then when you get the shadows and the light and darks coming on that, it's going to create a really interesting variation of ins and outs. You can see some of the actual shadows popping up in our Revit model. But again, we're pretty confident that we've created a color palette, material palette that actually is going to be spectacular the day you see it. And then in 10 years, it's still going to be as nice. And so I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
May I make a comment?
Sure, go ahead.
My only comment, there are an awful lot of rectangles
There are.
in
That's
this
the new thing.
building. Huh.
You know, it's not my choice. It's what everybody wants in the market right now. It's very interesting. But I'm more of a craftsman guy. But these guys, they really know what they're doing.
Let's see. Oh, and you'd mentioned exploring geo and exploring solar, and can you speak to any other energy saving thing? I mean, you're exploring those, so I don't know when you're going to have answers to those questions, but as far as the building and the quality of the building, and can you speak to?
So let me say that in the original presentation we made to staff, we had incorporated solar and geothermal in the presentation. And really, because that was more of a building permit issue, we took it out of this review. But it is our intention to do geothermal. We've already done an exploratory, we haven't done an exploratory well. I thought we had. But all we have to do now is determine how deep we have to go with our ground-based geothermal system. And so that you know, we have $700,000 in our preliminary construction budget to put in 94 wells for geothermal. So it's our intention to do it. If there was some overriding economic reason not to, then we wouldn't. But right now, for the houses we've got designed, and we're ready to submit for building permits. So if you guys say you guys are ready to go, and we get through the Board of Trustees, we're ready to submit for building permits, and every one of those houses has geothermal and solar panels on the roof. We also have the intention of putting in a rechargeable battery that's been developed by a company in Boulder that competes with the Tesla battery to help them store power. But that's really a building permit issue, not a planning issue.
Okay. And then my last question, we have an arts committee that's really trying to drive an arts program here. Would you entertain talking with them about potential art projects in the area? Maybe, I mean, you can even combine them with playgrounds and.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. We, as a general rule, our company gives back in every community we develop in. You know, as we get down the road, we make donations. It's part of the call you get when you say, how were the people? How did Mark take care of you? How did Nate take care of you? We always do that, stuff like that. We sponsor sporting events. We sponsor nonprofit organizations. We give scholarships to universities.
Okay. Who would the arts committee connect with? I guess we'd start with through staff, but who's the contact for?
I'm going to say it should be Mayu. What's her last name? Oh, that's right. I can't say it. I'll make sure that Stephen has the contact information for that.
Okay, that would be awesome.
But yeah, but definitely that's right up our alley. In fact, if you look at one of our buildings downtown Denver, they're repainting it right now for the Rush. The Crush. See, I'm the wrong guy. I mean, we have this event down in Rhino. We built a really cool building down in Rhino. We've got this huge mural on the side of the building, which was done by graffiti artists. And we get a fairly large amount of attention for it. And now we've got them repainting it now. I don't know if that's what you guys consider art. I don't necessarily, but, you know, but we're in.
Okay.
Just let me know.
All right, thank you.
Anything else I can tell you guys?
Any other questions? Anthony?
Yes, please. Just a couple things. First of all, thank you, Mr. Young, and your staff for such a comprehensive presentation, and Stephen as well. Thank you. That took a lot. It brought up a couple of questions for me, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and we kind of touched on this and moved away, but in your project, is there any possibility of electric vehicle charging stations or things like that? You're thinking with a project like this, you're going to have people who live in Boulder County are going to drive electric vehicles, and the added density from your project is going to kind of put a strain on what our existing plants and our stations can handle. So would there be any possibility, or had you had any thoughts about adding that?
We have, and in fact, every project we've built has electric car charging stations on it. We have, in our building in Rhino, we have one charge point. In our building that we're building down in the Denver Highlands at 2850 Zunai, every parking space, 54 parking spaces, every one of them is pre-wired for a charge point. And we're expecting more and more and more electric vehicles. We would be willing to put electric charging points outside, and we'll also pre-wire the houses for it as well, so everybody will be ready for it. And we have we're working with a company called UHG in Boulder, who is working on, and they're also with a nonprofit group called Green Up Our Schools, which I'm on the board of directors, and we are building car charging stations that are backed up with the battery and solar panels that we can move out and put up in very short notice and install permanent charging points. So, but again, that was something that we didn't know was appropriate for a planning level discussion.
Yeah, for me, it was just more curiosity if
So
that
yes,
you
that-
were thinking about doing that. Another question that came up for me, and I had thought about this as you were going over the space between the buildings, the green space, the play areas, if you will. I wondered if this project was at all gated. It kind of backs up to a busy street in Colton Road, and as I was looking at the design, I got a little bit concerned about someone running out into Colton Road if there is nothing stopping them. I see that there's a sidewalk there and some landscaping, but then Colton Road is right there as well. Is that area gated in? Is it closed in? Is it inaccessible? Or
So we don't have any intention at this point to fence it. We could certainly discuss that if we were going to do some kind of an open rail fence or something like that. I don't want to shield it from Colton, like with just a, like a big drape or something. Because it's really important that we engage with the community all the way around. So, I don't think we'd be opposed to it. I do think that there's certain natural boundaries, though. For instance, it's a 40-foot setback, and that's until you get to the right-of-way. I don't think that's the edge of curb. We have a sidewalk, and so there's seems like at least the sidewalk would be a good line to say, this is it, don't go much further. But again, I don't think we're really expecting to have a large number of small children in the site. I really do think it's going to be more like young professionals and empty nesters.
So I agree with that, and I hear what you're saying. But what brought it up for me in this case was that I did see some landscaping kind of at the edge of the sidewalk there, and it gives this sense of a false barrier. And I think we just want to be careful with having that there and not having some type of barrier.
Well, I think that it would be, can we pull up the landscape plan?
I'm working on it.
I do think that we have a landscape line that runs across there, and I know that I believe at the end of those roads, Yeah, so this is our landscape area, right? Right along here. Jeff, can you? Yeah, would you? Thanks for coming, by the way.
So yeah, for different reasons, we've got a real solid evergreen barrier all along Colton, mainly as a screen to the parking and the alleyways. So you would have to be a pretty strong kid to make your way through that. Having said that, there are some sidewalk connections, kind of hard to see here,
There's one
that
here.
do connect to the Colton sidewalk. And then from there, we actually did the landscape plan for the Colton Street. You've got, I think it's 8 feet or so of additional landscape to the curb. So there's some access points, but there is a solid barrier.
What is that? I'm sorry to interrupt. What is that material there that you were pointing
The
out?
landscape material?
Yes.
It's evergreen, so there's shrub pines, shrub spruces, a few junipers, ranging from 3 feet to 6 feet, probably ranging, I'd say, close to 10 feet deep. And then the other kind of nuance of this is all a utility easement. So we're limited to putting in a big brick wall, say, or a bunch of trees, or some other things. There's a limitation to what we can plant over the utilities.
And is that sidewalk on Colton? I mean, look, I don't know what the age is of what I'm looking at, but there's no sidewalk along that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
was
is it
just
there
going-
now?
It was approved for 2016,
Okay.
I built last
right.
year. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
But overall, there's 40 feet of separation between these units and kind of the end of their common open space areas to the end of their property. And then as Jeff was saying, there's an additional 8 to 10 feet before the actual roadway starts. So
Okay.
it's close to 50 feet of distance.
Any other questions or from commission? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate
You're
your
welcome.
presentation.
Thank you very much for the consideration.
Absolutely. Let's see. So public comment. Anybody have any comments on this development? Dalton? Yeah. Give us your name and your address.
Hello, my name is Dalton Villette. I live at 912 East Carval Place. And this is just a quick comment regarding what I think Chairman McCool brought up. I do agree that I really like a lot of the development, and I really appreciate the developer taking a green energy and conscious approach to this. But as far as some of the color schemes go, I think we can definitely try to differentiate ourselves. I'm sure you're familiar with across the street a lot of the condominiums that have been built in Broomfield over by the former Lakeshore, now Lifetime. And just from a lot of the concepts as far as the colors go, they seem a bit similar. So I would recommend an approach, maybe just try to go with a different color pattern, just to maybe make it appear like this is a part of Superior and not necessarily a part of Broomfield. So that was the only thing I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see. So, final thoughts, or actually questions for staff or the applicant? I'm going to probably close the public hearing next. But once that happens, we can't get any questions answered. We can get some clarification from staff on some things, but okay. All right. All good to close the public hearing? All right, cool. All right, public hearing is closed. Discussion?
So I'll kind of touch on the most recent topic of the landscaping. I think it's there's no such thing as over landscaping to me. I think that it's this landscape plan, the amount of product that they're putting into this plan is it's a good thing. I think that separating Colton from the development with the utilization of all of the landscaping material that they have proposed is significant. And typically when we see a lot of the developments going on, we wind up also seeing a lot of weeds and a lot of other, dead materials and everything. So, but I think just the landscaping plan alone, I'm very happy to see the amount of effort that they put into that, and the open spaces. I think that between the buildings, I think that's a significant amount that we don't see in a lot of the developments that we've been reviewing, and I really like the open space between the buildings.
Any other thoughts?
I had one thought that Michael commented on about the combination of the landscaping and the color palette. The color palette could maybe use some more, like Stephen was saying, it's what the Rock Creek PD calls for, is more muted colors and natural colors. But I think to Michael's point of that, combining that with the landscaping and the colors the landscaping brings into play, I think will help to accent the building colors.
Okay.
You probably can't really tell, but I'm really excited about this project. I really like what they brought forward here, and what I really like about it is that it's unique. It's not like anything that we've seen, and it does kind of fit with our ideas to have some character, some different character in Superior, and I think this project brings that. I was initially quite concerned about the flat roofs that this project has, and the rooftop decks. Just from history, knowing that there has been some opposition to that. And so I was initially a little bit concerned. I am, after seeing this project and reading about it and learning more about it, I think I'm less concerned about that aspect of this project. I think that it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. It makes it unique, and it makes it different. It gives us some different choices and options in housing. So I do like that, and I agree. Thank you for pointing that out. I mean, more landscaping is better, particularly like that, in this situation. I would prefer to have bushes and shrubs and things like that as a natural boundary, as opposed to a fence or a gate or something like that. So I really do appreciate that piece. And the other thing, it sounds like this developer is really willing to work with us around some additional things and adding some additional value to this project, such as artwork and an electric vehicle charging station. And I think, that shows a commitment to wanting to get this done. So that's kind of where I'm at. One of the questions that I have for staff, or I actually have a couple questions for staff. I noticed that this project had a couple of easements, actually maybe 4 or 5, that needed to be vacated. And I wondered why it was actually part of this application and not brought to us on a separate proposal. And if it should be, or if we can just kind of combine it all.
Well, you can do because there's a plat, and they wouldn't have had a platting application to do for this because there's no subdivision of land. But we needed the plat in order to establish the easements that they're proposing and required in order to provide their utilities and public access and fire access and all those standards. But they also can accomplish their vacations through that same plat. And why it hasn't been done to date is more of a question, I guess, for the property owner. But my understanding is that it wasn't necessary. As simple as that. Like, they wouldn't have known the location of the road until this was designed, and there was no reason to pipe what was conveyed above grade water-wise to Autry Reservoir until they had a development to necessitate it. So, and then that last little, that's actually on this, there's like this little corner here, they show the easement that needed to be vacated. This is a utility easement that was established. There's a big drain line in here, so it just bent, or it widened here, I guess is the best way to put it. It's about 40 feet wide. And then it got wider right here, right before it got to Autry Road, but it doesn't need to be. So that was constraining. They couldn't put this building in this location unless they vacated that little, it's like 30 square feet of easement in order to use that corner of the property. So those are the vacation requests. But it's typical for them to happen with development rather than before.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was my question.
Okay.
Any other comments? So there are a couple of items, I'm not hearing any deep concerns about the project. There were some possible recommendations we may want to include to the board as we move forward. Ones I highlighted were arts and just getting them connected and working with the Arts Committee to look at some potential artwork projects. Anthony, you mentioned the electric vehicle charging stations, which I didn't really hear they were included. I heard they were included in other projects, and that, yes, they do some pre-wiring, but I didn't really hear for sure that they were in this project. So if they are, great, but I think we can pass that along. No, that we can
They're
pass
not,
that
yeah.
along as one of our recommendations. Would you like to do that? Okay. David, are you comfortable with the street concern? Did that get answered well enough to? Do you wanna?
I can kind of speak to that a little bit more too. I mean, I don't think that it's something that we should just dismiss. I think that the width of the street is fine. I think that the concerns you guys brought up about cut through traffic and, you know, vehicles backing up, especially out of garages onto a 26-foot wide road that might be used to get from Bell Flatirons to the mall or vice versa, are all legitimate concerns. And I
Yeah.
talked to Alex Arenello earlier today about it, and he did, you know, agree that we could look at this again and just make sure that there are not some traffic calming measures that we could put in, whether or not that's a couple of stop signs here and there in order to, you know, make Colton more attractive to traffic, or speed bumps or something like that. But
There's
we
no
haven't-
left turn from Tyler into there.
There's not, so they couldn't go east. but
You'd almost
they-
have to come off Colton to make it, you know, to even
Correct,
get in
yeah.
there, right? It
But if
wouldn't
they
be-
were coming back from the mall, they could take
They
Lake
could.
Shore Lane instead of, or, you know, it's all right turn, so hopefully they would stay on Autry Drive if they were to cut through there anyway
Sure.
and then make a turn. And but we could look at signage or some other ways, and I
Okay.
haven't been able to have a full conversation with him about that or even bring this up with the applicant yet, but it's something we can explore more if you guys feel the need.
Okay. That's Lake Shore, right?
That's Lake Shore, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So along those lines, see, I'm imagining Lakeshore Drive like the interior roads over in Rock Creek Circle. When you drive around the interior of Rock Creek Circle. So it's not, to me, Lakeshore doesn't present itself as a two-way busy street.
Mm-mm.
It presents itself to me as an alleyway, like kind of a glorified alleyway, where you're not going to have a lot of busy two-way traffic.
Right, but there's no mall on one end of the Rock Creek Circle.
True.
Right, and I think we can put in traffic calming ideas or elements that will prevent people from using that as a cut through. I mean, that was my only concern, was with the right in, right out on multiple areas, that the traffic will use it as a cut, or people will use it as a cut through. But you're right, it's more of an alleyway than it is an
A wide
actual
one.
road, right?
Yeah, it's a wide one.
Yeah.
but- So I think it's fine to ask, just make the recommendation that staff look closely at Lake Shore and have Alex just review
Okay.
whether we need calmings on it. Not necessarily we think there should be, but that we just take a close look at it. Okay. And lastly, I had the color. I didn't see much. It seemed like everybody was okay with the accent, with the colors of the units.
I can't say I like them, but I'm not going to try and inflict my taste on anybody
Yeah,
else.
fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. All right. So with that said, you want to take the motion since it's right here in front of you?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the Town of Superior Planning Commission Resolution number PC-Series 2008.
I'm sorry.
08.
It's number 8.
PC-8 Series 2018, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the Town of Superior recommending approval of the final plat and final plat site plan for Rock Creek Ranch, filing number 17D, Lot 1, Block 1, case numbers FP-2018-001, 2018-06 and FPSP-2018-02. With,
Yeah,
okay.
we want to add the recommendations here, or do they get?
That's fine. I mean, the only comment I would just make, I know you pointed out contact concerning art projects. Well, that's certainly a worthy endeavor. I'm not sure that would be.
Yeah, it didn't seem like it needs to fit
Right.
in the resolution.
I don't believe that would really be an appropriate
same thing with the
condition for
calming.
this. I know you would. I mean, I would just point out the additional conditions that that are agreeable, other than the art project endeavor.
Okay, like the electric vehicle charging stations, or again, is that?
I think
separate?
those are,
Hmm.
I think those would
Just
kind of fall
list
in the
those
same.
separate.
Yeah.
Okay. And the conditions you had listed, Stephen, I apologize, I don't have those, or if you could bring those up for us, please.
Oh, it's wrong
Yep,
line,
got
sorry.
it. Yep, you want to take, yeah, with following
With the
conditions.
following staff, or with the following conditions, staff recommendations: approve the resolution for a final plat replat for Lot 1, Block 1, Rock Creek Ranch filing 17D, and final plat site plan for the platted area, case numbers FP-2018-06 and FPSP-2018-02. Per the conditions outlined below, the associated final plat needs to precede a recommendation of the corresponding FPSP. Applicant shall make minor technical and red line corrections to plans as identified by town staff, and the final plat shall be recorded prior to recording of the FPSP.
All right, so we have a recommendation or a motion on the table. Any second? Okay. Second by Commissioner Miller. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and it's unanimous. And then if we could just tack on those additional recommendations in our
Take to the
memo
board,
to
your
the
mem-
board,
yeah.
specifically
Will
the
do.
electric charging stations, the connection with the Arts Committee, and looking at the calming on, just taking a closer look at Lake Shore.
Thanks, you guys.
All right, thank you. All right, what is the last one? That was a big one. All right, so, yeah, we have staff announcements. You wanna let that-
Yeah.
Actually, if you don't mind, before we
Sure.
do that, it's come to my attention for item number 3. This was having to do with the public hearing and adoption, a resolution approving a major final development plan amendment. It just come to my attention that it wasn't put to a motion for a continuance of the hearing. So I would just suggest that briefly reopen, set it to a motion for a continuance, and so that at least we can get it on the record.
Okay,
Yep.
so do I need to reopen it if it's a continuance?
Yeah, why
Since
don't
it's
you
not-
kind of briefly just reopen public hearing, just set it to a motion, just so we have it on the
Okay.
record for the
Sounds
hearing
good.
itself.
All right. I'll reopen the public hearing and adoption of a resolution approving a major final development plan amendment to allow for additional wall signs on the medical office building at 3 Superior Drive, Lot 1A, Block 12, and associated parking garage at 5 Superior Drive, Lot 1B, Block 12. The applicant was not ready for tonight, so we want to continue the public hearing. Do I have a motion to continue the public hearing? All right, got a
I'd make
motion?
that motion.
All right, from Commissioner Malia, second.
Can you
Right.
say,
Oh.
sorry, can you say, continue to
Date certain.
September?
September
18th.
Yeah,
To continue the motion until September 18th,
we're
2018.
going to continue the hearing. Yep.
Continue the
Yeah.
hearing.
All right,
Okay.
all right, second from Commissioner Reese. All in
Second.
favor? Anyone opposed? That's unanimous. All right. Stays open. All right. All right, now we have, thank you.
You're good now. You're good.
All right, staff announcements.
So just a reminder that we'll have our work session next week, next Monday, the 10th, on the Northwest Planning Update with Clarion Associates and the town board. And that meeting starts as a work session at 6 o'clock, so, and dinner will be provided.
And we're doing our recommendation at the work session, right? And, or not a recommendation, but our update
Do
at the work
update
session.
At the work
right.
session, yeah.
And can I get in touch with Darcy this week, just so I can, I mean, I've got to leave on Friday, and I don't get back till Monday at like 3:40, so I'm like hoping I'm
We-
going to get here.
Yeah, we can send you the presentation. It came in and got finalized today or whatever,
It
so I'm
did,
happy to
okay,
forward
yeah.
that to you today.
So if I can pull something together that somebody else
Oh.
could take if need be, if I don't get back here in time.
Cor-
It is Frontier Airlines, so.
reliable. But yeah, we'll get, I'll put a note to email that to you in the morning.
Okay, that'd be great.
And then the only other thing is what you guys just learned is that we're gonna have a PC meeting on the 18th to discuss the FDP amendment for the medical office building signage, so. I guess we'll get into that detail more when we have an application to share, so. But that will be due this week, so I gotta turn that around for you guys,
Okay.
the following week. I don't think that there's anything else, so.
So it looks like there's some activity at Fourth and William, right? So they're
I haven't heard about building permit getting pulled
just some
yet. I
signs
asked
up.
about
Yeah,
it.
there's stuff going on. Or that
last
they have a
week.
permit to do.
They have a permit
uh,
ready to get picked up, but they haven't picked it up, is my understanding, so.
So the street signs out there and the work they're doing for.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, they had the street closed today.
It would be
so-
different to have a right-of-way work permit than to have the actual building permit.
Okay.
Those
So they may
things-
have
two
a
different
right-of-way
things.
permit.
I haven't got an update from Public Works on whether or not they've got some improvements
Okay.
for William yet. Is that the street you're talking about, I assume?
And then anything going on with the, what is it, 6 or 8 lots on Third on the
The
south side of the
administrative
creek?
amendment to adjust those lot lines got approved, so I think that coincided with them listing those properties or fairly, was pretty much in sync with that.
Yeah.
That actually hasn't been recorded yet. That's something that got dropped off last week. I have to review the Mylar and then record it, so it's not completely final, but we did an initial review and that's just the final. It's kind of like the post-approval process if it were to have gone to the board or planning commission.
Okay.
But
And is there, so some residents brought up the vacated right-of-way and access to the, I guess it's a county-owned parcel in the back. Is there any?
there's both a
information on that?
county-owned parcel and a lot that was platted back in 1908. So
Wow.
there's a lot 9 that was platted that wasn't contiguous with Third Avenue. But the I guess the short explanation for that is the fact that they've been able to piece all those parcels back together, and they still have that vacated right-of-way, allowed them to replat it and you're not establishing a new alley or any new right-of-way, but they actually are able to have kind of what's called a flagship parcel that gets that parcel access back to. So it was always platted there. There was only a vacation that was ever done in the 1970s. There was no lot line adjustment or an elimination of a parcel. So there's a development right associated with Lot 9, and now they've been able to plat it so that it still has access to Third Avenue. So that's
Okay.
all that was done. Yeah.
All right.
So, but they're basically using that same area. It's just not.
But
it's
they've
not
platted
an
it,
alley.
but
it's
they've
part
platted
of
it
Lot
such that
9
there
now.
is access to that
Yep.
to that lot.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other context, I guess, there is just that I imagine the flood boundaries and parameters were a lot different back in 1974 than they are now, and the improvements that were made after 2013. Public Works looked at this application in detail. We've had it for almost a year, if not over a year, since it originally came in, and we've gone back and forth with the applicant over how they could configure that and how they could gain access and all of these things. And there was no issue about Lot 9 being in the floodway.
Okay.
So.
And that doesn't need to come before the planning commission.
No,
those replats?
no.
Okay.
But it's similar to like what we've discussed for the Northwest Area Plan. If you have platted lots, you have a development right, and the boundary line adjustment, as long as you're not creating a new lot, it's an administrative process.
Okay. Thank you.
Have the new flood maps been approved?
They got approved either September of 2016 or 17. I think it's been 2 years, but it may have just been 1 year. But it was September of either last year or the year before that those maps finally got approved. So it was 3 years after the flood, at minimum. Yep.
Any other questions for staff?
There's
Alright.
still some adjustments going on there for the Rogers Farm property, but the ones that impact Third Avenue that Bob's asking about, those are all done.
All right. Meeting's adjourned.